Share, make
Oh,
sure that
not
we're
on yet?
live.
Okay.
NCTV?
No?
Not
Oh,
yet.
it says from NCTV, we are live.
Make sure that we're live. Now we're live.
Okay.
NCTV? Okay.
All right. Okay, folks. As a preliminary matter, this is Ray Pohl, Chairman of the Nantucket Historic District Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. And for the moment, I'm only going to do board members of the HDC, that is, and staff members, okay? So board members, when I call your names, please respond in the affirmative. John McLaughlin.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Val Oliver.
Here, aye.
Thank you, Val. Stephen Welch.
Aye.
Super, and this is the chair, Ray Pohl. I don't believe we have any other board members on, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, very good. Moving along. Staff, when I call your names, please respond in the affirmative. Kathy Flynn.
Present.
Holly Bacchus, I believe I saw her on there.
Present.
Great, and that was it for staff, correct? All right,
Correct.
great. So, good morning. This is an open meeting of the Nantucket Historic District Commission, and it is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Page, let's see. For this meeting, the Nantucket Historic District Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless noted otherwise. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. So we're now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair and taking care to identify yourselves. Finally, each vote taken at this meeting will be done via roll call. Okay, the very first thing that I would request of one of my board members is to make a motion to approve today's very short agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Val. Stephen. Stephen might be muted. John, are you in favor of Val's motion to approve today's agenda?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Stephen, are you there yet?
Aye.
Oh, great. Okay, and the chair is in favor, motion carries. Okay, So the very first, actually, the first item is public comment. Do we have anything to read from in email form? Holly, Kathy?
No.
I see no. Okay, so then we'll move on to item number 2, which is really what generated this meeting. So here we are by way of background. A few weeks ago, I got a call from the Enquirer and Mirror asking about details of a preservation restriction that was placed on what is currently the youth hostel at 31 Western Avenue in Surfside. I was completely unaware of it. So the reporter from the paper sent me a copy of this preservation restriction, which of course I was very happy to see that such a document existed. But then I was a little confused when it became apparent to me that the HDC had been put in a position of being the administrators of the preservation restriction, which involves all sorts of things that don't necessarily relate to what this board is charged to do. In other words, there were certain things that had to do with restricting the amount of interior work that would happen to the building, whether or not the property could be subdivided, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and then also annual or at intervals sort of checkups on the property to make sure that all the restrictions were being conformed to. So that part kind of troubled me. And so I started talking around and I said, you know, how many of these restrictions is the HDC actually in charge of? And the answer came back, well, none, 0. And so that started to frighten me. And so I felt like we were getting into a domain that we really weren't charged with, maybe beyond, is sort of outside of our wheelhouse. So it became clear to me that an organization like the Nantucket Preservation Trust, whom, by the way, we have a representative online, I believe, Mary, are you there? Let me see.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so great. And obviously, I believe that you're here to speak on this subject, are you not? Okay,
Yes.
great. So my view of this whole situation, particularly given, and I should say this, the time-sensitive nature of this is as follows. This piece of property is now currently listed on the market. And so there are realtors calling me, asking me about the preservation restriction. And I quickly want to get it into the hands of an organization that was really set up to be able to do this. That was item number 1. Item number 2, one of the things that they talk about in the restriction is the fact that in order to make any exterior changes to any of the buildings out there, they would have to come before the HDC. And I thought, well, this is no different than what we do with every single building on Nantucket. So they'd have to come before us, restriction or no. So the other thing that I think that everyone, most particularly this piece of property, would benefit from is what I would call a checks and balances, which means that the very first people that whoever the future owner of this property would go to would be to Mary's organization, who would then enforce these restrictions and so forth, and go further to start looking at zoning, because frankly speaking, there is an ability under a state rule that would allow for the subdivision of this property. So we as HDC members really don't get into the business of subdividing property and all that. So I really believe that everyone would benefit by having the oversight of this restriction go to Mary and her group, and the HDC would still be involved in the way that we've always been involved, which is to review the architectural features, with a mind, particularly given that this is a very historic compound, with a mind to historic preservation of the existing fabric. So that's why we're here to discuss this, because I would like a vote of some kind, but I would certainly love to hear from Mary. Could you just sort of walk us through some of this? And then I'd also like to hear the opinions, of course, of the members that are sitting on this discussion right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the Chair laid it out, the big points of this discussion, in a very clear and easy to understand manner. This is kind of an anomaly, this restriction being not only held by the town, but administered by the HDC. Just, it's my understanding that at the time, the CPC was sort of under the impression that any such preservation restrictions should be held by the town, as land bank holds all of the restrictions, I guess, that are involved with other CPC funding projects, and the NPT was in a bit of a transition then. But if you look at paragraph 19 of the restriction, it kind of lays out that the desire was to transfer or to reassign this to if this was ever to be reassigned, it would be reassigned to Nantucket Preservation Trust. The Nantucket Preservation Trust has more than 25 easements that we monitor currently. Some of them are just facades, some of them are interiors, some are private homes, and we have a monitoring system set up. We work with an easement consultant, Brian Pfeiffer, some of you may know, and he's really at the top of his field, an excellent resource. And I think this is a building that, as the chair pointed out, the thing of having to have the HDC review it is already just one layer of protection. And I think having NPT be involved in those discussions with the owner would be another layer of protection for historic preservation. You may have seen in the INM this morning that the owner has been chosen. And so, yeah.
Is it Egan?
No.
Oh. Okay.
It's a blue flag.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think making sure that the building is properly stewarded means the relationship would need to start sooner rather than later with that new owner. I've been talking to Holly, who's been talking to town council a little bit, trying to figure out the difference between a designee, a reassignment. This would be a long-term relationship where NPT would be managing this restriction for, in perpetuity. So eventually we would like this to be reassigned to us, which we understand may require a town meeting vote. It does seem like if you were to go through paragraph 20 to the grantee may at its discretion remove and replace the HDC as its designee to administer, manage, and enforce this restriction. It looks like that transfer could happen sooner rather than later if this body decides to transfer this restriction to NPT. And then it would be our hope that at a later date it could be reassigned to us, because this is going to be a financial commitment that NPT is going to have to spend a good amount of money to monitor the restriction and to work with the developer early on. This moment is kind of the most critical moment to see what will happen to this structure. Mm-hmm. And I want to think positive that this is a good test of a preservation restriction. There was public money put into this building by the CPC, by this community, and I would like for this building to be properly stewarded into the future. And as you point out, the HDC, nothing that NPT would ever approve or recommend if we do hold this restriction would ever supersede the HDC. The HDC is always going to have the ultimate authority as to what can and cannot happen. It's just another layer. I appreciate your considering this, and I know that, and scheduling this time-sensitive meeting to discuss this. And I think it could be a good opportunity for all these different bodies to work together. And I just also want to publicly thank Holly Backus for her really incredible work in the last couple of weeks with this. And so
I second that.
We're lucky to have her, and
that's just terrific.
Mary, so it's a situation to be in, I think.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes.
Mary, thank you. I should have asked, there are other people on the docket right now, and if any of you who are listening to me right now would care to speak on this subject, I would certainly recognize you. I would ask first that you unmute yourselves. Most of you are muted at the moment. I know some of you are here to speak about the other business item that we're going to be taking up after this. But if anyone else would care to speak on this particular issue, and by the way, that includes you, Holly, I would certainly welcome you. So Holly, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mary. Yes, I did speak to town council as of early this morning because I put the request in very quickly. And it is recommended to have an alternative designee as the NPT through section 19 or 20 of the restriction. That would not require a town meeting approval. Basically, what it would be doing is having NPT as the manager of the restriction. So take HDC out of the loop, but the town would still be holding the restriction. What you all would do, what I would recommend you all to do would be to make a motion to propose to the select board to put this on their agenda to appoint the alternative designee as NPT. And then town council would help staff with the form that is required for the acceptance of the restriction by NPT to be recorded with the restriction. So that's where I would recommend. I also just want to point out that I have a background of this lovely structure behind me. There's plenty of fabulous ones available at NHA at our disposal. It's a great structure. I did have the privilege of inspecting this structure this week with assistance from the broker and the tenant that's currently there. It's fabulous, and I would be more than happy to provide, and I apologize, I don't have anything right now, but I will provide photographs and my, my inspection report, if you will, of the compound. But it's just a great, just element of Nantucket's history. And obviously there was foresight into preserving it. And that's why the town went through the CPC funding to put this preservation restriction on. And it is an anomaly for the town to hold such a restriction. It's very odd. So to be able to, pass that on to NPT, who is a steward of multiple properties on Nantucket, making sure that these properties are protected in perpetuity. So that would be my recommendation.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very much appreciated. Is there anyone else other than the board members that would like to speak on this particular subject? Hearing none, I am now going to open it up to the board to see what various people have to say about this. Stephen, are you ready?
Sure. So I slept in a Holiday Inn last night, so I can speak on the legal aspects of this. I don't know if you guys remember that commercial, but no, yeah, I concur with the comments. I did look through the documentation just to see if anything jumped out at me. The concept of a recommendation to the select board pursuant to or to affect the assignment under section 19 seems the most appropriate and probably the only legal way to do it. So I support the concept. I support that we'll make a motion. I will make a comment. I think that it would be appropriate, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, I wanted to follow up with you on this before the meeting, but it's just been kind of crazy. I think that given, regardless of who this, I want to be very careful in comments because I think it's appropriate to be so. Regardless of who this was transferred to, I think there are some additional protections that the HDC could affect. This document puts in place protections that if they were, God forbid, violated, would end up in a litigation type of a settlement or a settling through litigation. There's an alternative and also important step that the HTC could pursue, which is, and we don't have to do it today, but I think it would be beneficial to consider that, which is to designate the structure as protected So under the protected status, the requirement is that it needs to be a significant structure, which is defined in our code as 50 years old or older, associated with one or more historic figures or events, with a broad island architectural, cultural, political, economic, or social history. I think we're checking all these boxes. And also is historically or architecturally significant, and being the kind of Gothic Victorian with the Nantucket stick style and all these other great things that this building is, it certainly fits under that category. And I think the other one is that the requirement be that it would be all these things by itself or in context, which I think it is by itself. And in fact, it sets the context for that whole area of the island. So with giving you that little bit of a background, the quick summary of that is that if we were to designate this by an official act as protected in advance of an application, as opposed to waiting until an application comes in, I don't know that there's any legal gravitas for having done it in advance, but I think it does, it certainly does convey the message that this is a significant structure. The HDC holds it in high regard, and that any changes or modifications to the structure would be closely scrutinized. And I would just suggest that that's something we consider. Again, I don't know that we need to vote on it today, but I think it's something we could discuss if you were amenable, Mr. Chair. It is under the broad preservation aspect on the agenda. I touched base with Holly on this yesterday because I was looking at some consent items. So anyways, those are my thoughts. I hope they're helpful.
They're very helpful. And I want to make one point of clarification on this. We're not just talking about one structure here. We're actually talking about 4 structures. And I believe 3 of them are definitely contributing. I think the 4th one may be more recent. I'm not sure. But the restriction that that's under discussion right now is actually for the entire property. It covers all the structures on the property. So yeah, we wouldn't just designate the one building. We would have to, determine if all of them or 3 of them or whatever, but that's something that we can look into. Thank you, Stephen. Val, any comments on the?
No, I think Steve covered everything. Everybody's covered everything.
Okay, great. John?
Yes. I'm here.
Yes. What do you think about the idea of us taking the preservation restriction that currently is charged to us and moving it over to the Preservation Trust organization, which, by the way, I want to make sure that everyone understands this. It does not take away our powers to review and vote on any of those structures that are currently on the youth hostel property out in Surfside. We still get to review, but we have another layer of review in the form of the Preservation Trust, and that's what we'd like to do.
You through?
Yeah, I'm through.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want my opinion on this?
Yeah.
I feel that this preservation restriction has been there for quite a while. And the use of it and the governorship of it, who is the preservation restriction listed as? Did anybody know?
Who administers the preservation restriction, or who is burdened with it?
Okay, I see it. Thank you. Let me take a minute.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I've read quite a bit of this, and
Oh, good.
okay, it goes to the town of Nantucket.
Mhm.
The town of Nantucket would basically be the board of selectmen.
Well,
And they
that's
change
correct, John.
With this. I hope I'm right in that.
You are right.
As you'll notice that every board or commission in this town, most of them have study committee, or, you know, to do something before they do anything. They take it together and they put it together and they present it to the Board of Selectmen. That's what should be happening. HDC, other than the exterior architectural features of any structure, anything else should not be in the realm of the HDC.
So we're in total, John, we're in total agreement. So what we're hoping to do now is get a vote, take a vote on sending this restriction to the select board, who will then reassign this restriction to the Preservation Trust, who would be responsible for dealing with things like the interior of the building, annual checkups on the building, possible subdivision of the property, things like that. But we would still be able to review all of the architectural features out there, definitely.
Ray, I had more comment. I was going to say any change that would go through this would not, I don't believe it would be the selectmen to vote on behalf of the town. I think it should go to the town meeting. Any changes in this whatsoever, it belongs to the public. They should be able to speak, not 5 people. It should be the town at a town meeting or something.
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Holly.
So that's pertaining to section 19 of the restriction on the assignment itself. If the town through the select board wishes to relinquish the full authority of the restriction to another entity, which would be Nantucket Preservation Trust or an entity of that such manner, that would, yes, then require an active town meeting, because essentially the town residents, the entire island, we have an interest in this property as a cultural historical resource. So that's why section 20 was included in the restriction, to give the opportunity for the town through you all in the select board to alternate a certain designee that you all would see fit, that would uphold the management component. Because as you previously stated, the town, through our staff, we just don't have the manpower, the capabilities to uphold these type of restrictions that, or monitor them, if you will, like what MPT does. So this would be the better alternative to relinquish that power. And essentially the town residents would not be relinquishing any of other rights to this restriction or this property, if that makes any sense.
Thank you, Holly. So, John, what we'd like to do is get this to the selectmen so they can look at it, review it, vote it. And as Holly said, if they, choose to, it could go to town meeting, or it could go directly to Preservation Trust or some other designee. But it's up to the selectmen to decide that. Select board, sorry. Any further comment, John?
Well, yes, the HTC should do their job as the state law. And I feel that this here preservation restriction belongs to the people of the town of Nantucket. And to make any changes whatsoever in it, you would have to go through, I would say, the town council. And then if the public wants to comment on it, I think they should. I'd like to hear what people have to say. So I think that the preservation restriction, as it sits right now, belongs to the people.
Correct.
Not the Board of Selectmen. It was turned over to the town of Nantucket, meaning everybody. So to file this with a change in it, or the recommendation, it would have to go to town meeting. That's what.
Stephen, did I see you raising your hand over there?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I think John makes an important point, but I wanted to clarify, at least with respect to my understanding, is that, John, we would be making a recommendation to go ahead and assign the restriction. the select board would have to make the decision per the contract, but it's an official act. So they would have to do it at a publicly noticed meeting, and then the public could comment. It wouldn't basically this is like a contract, and the way that it's handled through the select board wouldn't have to be a town meeting, but it would have to be publicly noticed for public comments. That's a,
What?
no, nothing. So if that's helpful, John.
I'm sorry?
I said, if it's helpful to understand that it will have to go on my understanding is this will have to go on the select board agenda, and it will be a discussion in the public hearing, or at least a public meeting. And if people wanted to comment, they could either do beforehand. If it's not, I don't think it'll be a public hearing, it'd be a public meeting. So
Yeah.
people can watch, and if they have comments, they can speak before the topic, but it's a select board decision they can do in front of everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, John, thanks. Are we ready to move this to a vote?
Yeah,
I would like to hear the motion first, please.
You'd like to hear the motion?
Is somebody going to make a motion?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely, John. So I believe Stephen is going to be making a motion here.
Okay, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
okay, I'll quickly prepare. So the motion will be simple.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. The motion is to make a recommendation to the select board to assign, under the terms of section 19, this restriction to the Nantucket Preservation Trust, Inc., and to do anything in regard to affect that assignment.
I like the motion. Okay, this is a vote on that motion. Val Oliver,
Aye.
thank you. John McLaughlin,
Aye.
thank you, John. Stephen,
Aye.
and the chair's in favor, motion carries. Okay, I think this is great. And I'm glad that you were all able to get together, because this is very time sensitive. And I want all the proper stuff to be put in place so that we avert any potential negative consequences to the youth hostel. Thank you all. Okay, so now we're going to turn to other business, and we have one agenda item on other business.
Mr. Chair,
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
before you do that, I just,
Yeah.
if I could, just to Mr. Welch's earlier point about which buildings to designate, if you look at the Form B that's attached to the restriction, they highlight which of the buildings they're discussing. And there's historical narratives about that. So that might help you. And thank you for your discussion on this.
So in a nutshell, let's look at B, because we could actually take action on, Stephen, your idea of earlier. So we have dormitory, cottage, shed, and of course the main building. Are all of those are subject to the easement, correct?
Correct.
Right. And do we know the vintage on all four?
Yes, we do.
And what are
Back
the?
up here. So the actual life-saving station was built in 1874
Okay.
with the additions that were done in 1884.
Mhm.
Then you have the cottage, originally built as a storehouse, now converted to residential use, known as the Surfside Life Saving Station Cottage.
Yeah.
Doesn't give a date on that one. The dormitory, which is in the back,
Mhm.
from 1900 to 1919. And then the shed is the newest of vintage out there, between 1930 and 1950. And that's the one with that concrete block.
Right.
That's
So
the
all
only
those-
one. I apologize.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Holly.
Mr. I was just going to mention that's the only one where there's a caveat to allowing some change to it if that is requested.
Oh, okay. So there's no date placed on the cottage, as far as I can tell. right?
If you scroll down to the Form B, does it have a date for the cottage?
I'm assuming that it's older than the shed.
I believe it is in the Form B.
There's Form B. Yeah.
Pat and Brian did, right here. Cottage, former store, 1884.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So what do we think about the idea of continuing and then designating these buildings? I think all four would be eligible.
Now, you mean now continuing or continuing to another hearing? Just to be clear.
I mean, well, what would the merit of continuing it to another hearing be?
I'm fine with proceeding now. I think that we we certainly have sufficient information on record in the file, and we've all reviewed it to make a determination of these structures as protected. So I personally feel comfortable with proceeding now. I just wasn't sure which you were suggesting, that's all.
No. Well, I feel comfortable too. And as they say, there's no time like the present. And, you know, and in this case, I think things are happening really rapidly. So I'd kind of rather get this settled now rather than later.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, I just rather I would rather it happen now than it languish like so many other things.
I'm just basing on the documentation at hand and is available in the public record, including the Form B. It seems to me that, and even as referenced within the restriction itself, that the main building, the cottage, and the dormitory are referred to as, quote unquote, the historic buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest that for the purposes of protected status, that we would motion and approve the historic buildings as listed and identified in the restriction are individually and together considered protected under our language. And I would feel comfortable with that.
Okay, great. I was hoping you'd say that. How about you, Val?
I'm in. Aye.
How about you, John?
I wanted to make a statement before we do anything else, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could we go back to the map that they had there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, could we put that on, please?
Yeah, Holly's going to do that for you now.
Thank you.
That one, John?
Yeah, yes, maybe a little stronger.
Zoom in a little, Holly. Keep going. There you go. How's that, John?
Okay. Yes. I notice it says on the right, right in the middle, it says Station Street. Okay?
Yes, correct.
I would hate to see this go into a turnabout station, because when I was a kid, it was Station Street, it was Station Avenue, I believe. And now we're going to get into double changing names of streets. And this, I don't know which one this would be safer to have. Station Street without any arguments from the public, and leave it at Station Avenue. It was Station Avenue when I was a kid. So I just wanted to throw that in there, not as a zinger, but just as a notation of something that could possibly go haywire like that other street. Thank you.
Thank you, John. But John, would you be in favor of all four of these buildings being listed as what's the term we use, Stephen?
Protected.
Protected. The four buildings that sit on the property that the youth hostel is on right at the moment. John?
Yes.
So what we're discussing right now is that we would like to take a vote of this board to essentially give protected status to the 4 buildings that are currently on the youth hostel property, the ones that you just saw on that plan.
Right.
Are you okay with that?
Yes, you'd have to go back to research it, make sure the dates are right. And then before they make any changes, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. I think, Stephen, again, since it was your idea, I think we could move forward with the motion if you.
Okay. Just for discussion, if it's okay, briefly, so I think there's 2 ways to do this. I've never seen us actually, the HDC put a protected status on. So my inclination is to be more thorough than less. And what I mean by that is, kind of stating some things and the basis, as opposed to just referencing, the buildings in the restriction and the language in the building with Nantucket in mind. I'm fine either way, but do you have a preference, Mr. Chair? Like, you want to should we spell it out, or should we just make it a brief motion? I'm not articulating well. Okay, I'm going to make a motion. It'll be the long one. Sorry.
Let's go for the brief one, but no, let's take the long one. I think that's better. It gives us more protections.
Okay, so the motion would be that the HDC would designate the former Surfside Life Saving Station, now known as the Star of the Sea Youth Hostel, hereinafter the main building, which contains a Victorian Gothic style 2-story wood frame structure built approximately 1874, and flanking shingle style shed additions built approximately 1884. That's A. B, a 1-story wood frame structure built originally as a privy and storehouse, now converted to residential use and known as the Surfside Life Saving Station Cottage, hereinafter the Cottage. And C, the former stable, now known as the dormitory, hereinafter the dormitory, which is a 1 1/2 story wood frame structure of vernacular design built between approximately 1900 and 1919, as protected. I think I've said as protected twice. The basis for the determination is the main building, the cottage, and the dormitory meet the qualifications as follow. Each being 50 years old or older, each associated with 1 or more historic figures or events, or with broad island architectural, cultural, political, economic, or social history, or some combination thereof. Each historically or architecturally significant either by itself or in context with other buildings in terms of period, style, method of building construction, or association with a noted architect or builder, again, individually or together. And I think that would be the motion.
Yeah, so that will go down in history as the world's longest HDC motion, but it's a really well-crafted one. Thank you very much, Stephen. So on that motion, Val.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. John.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, John. And Stephen, I can't imagine you're not in favor of your motion.
Aye.
Very good. And I'm in favor of it as well. So that's great. Motion carries. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much, Holly. This is a very important issue, and I'm really glad that we have a resolution to it in short order. Are we all set on that one?
Yes, sir.
If so, I would
Thank you
now
the
like to
commission.
turn our yes, Holly. Did you say something, Holly?
I just wanted to thank the commission for going through that process. Thank you.
Oh, well, yeah, that's why we're here. Okay, thanks, Holly. Next up, we have, I wanted to circle back around. I'm sure that you all remember that we did have sort of a joint meeting with the Historical Commission, and the idea was floated of doing what we call a Memorandum of Understanding. I, for one, want to obtain some more information on what exactly that entailed. It turns out, coincidentally, that the Select Board has requested Town Council to weigh in on that particular understanding. So that's good. That would have been the first thing. But I would just like to know from the board members that are present now, and I also noticed, by the way, and I will allow them to speak, that we do have some members of the Historical Commission on the dock. So that's why we're here. Basically, I want to see what sort of information any of you board members would require so we can get that in the pipeline so we can actually revivify this discussion and really take some action of some kind on it. So that's why it's on as other business. So having said that, we have Georgia, we have Mickey, and we have Angus, all of whom I believe are here representing the interest of the Historical Commission. Would any or all of you like to speak? Angus, looks like you're off of mute, so go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for bringing this to your agenda, and we're looking forward to moving forward with it. I'd just like to say that I believe Holly would be able to answer any technical questions, but I just wanted to thank you for bringing this before the board.
Oh, thank you, Angus. Thank you. I'm sorry it's taken so long. Have you looked at our agenda recently?
I take through it every week.
I don't look at it anymore. It depresses me, so I only look at it 2 minutes before I go on a Tuesday night. But
Thank you for your dedication.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. You too. Mickey, Georgia, anything that you would like to say? Georgia's saying no. Mickey, no. Oh, thumbs up. Okay, Mickey has given us a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so board members, what, if anything, do we need moving forward with an informed discussion about memorandum of understanding? I do think I would like to certainly wait and hear what town council has to say about it. But what are you thinking? Anyone?
I'll jump in. I support the concept. I support the overall concept. I also support the idea of sending it to town council. I had asked that and I'm sure we would do this in any event, but as opposed to, I would ask that we clarify through our own request that we're looking for town council input with respect to the merits of HDC matters. I don't have any concerns with what's been presented. My understanding, this is boilerplate and so on and so forth. So it's not I'm not looking for any second agenda here. I'd like to clarify that I think it's important that we ask town council to opinion on HDC matters, because the select board may or may not be doing that. I didn't watch their meeting, and
Right.
It may be with respect to select board or town overall matters that they're inquiring.
Thank you, Stephen, for making that distinction, because I'm certain that you're correct, that they're really looking at it from the perspective of the select board as opposed to the perspective of the HDC.
And I'm sorry, just to come from a big family, this is how you do it, you interrupt. And also, I don't know if the Historical Commission has access, but also, I would ask that in our request for opinion, we would ask for town council's opinion on how it might strengthen the Historical Commission's position, not relative to the HDC, but relative to its mission under the certified local government status, which could be helpful for them, especially, for instance, if this was a boilerplate document that was created 10 years ago and something has changed. So there's both sides of that coin, and I think it's important that we would support that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Stephen. Val, anything?
Got nothing.
Okay. And by the way, this is sort of the preliminary discussion leading up to the substantive discussion that hopefully we'll have in the near future. John, anything that you would care to add on this?
Nothing other than fish and chips for the airport.
Okay, you got it. So it sounds like what we're going to do is we're going to wait for town council's opinion. But now to Stephen's point, and I don't know whether this requires a motion or what, somebody has to tell me, but we would like to enlist the services of town council with respect to memorandum of understanding as seen through the eyes of the HDC as opposed to through the eyes of the select board. Kathy, Holly, do either of you know the answer to that? Do we need to vote on that? Do we need to submit a formal request from the HDC to the select board requesting, or to somebody requesting town council's opinion of this?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I did not submit for town council's opinion and support and I guess guidance on this particular issue like I did for the youth hostel restriction. That was done by the planning director. So I'm not exactly sure on how that request was handled. But I can say that the biggest thing was making sure that there wasn't any concerns with our special legislation that gives you all the authority as an
Right.
HDC. That was done prior to the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. So because that predates that, we just want to make sure that there's no concerns in that regard. And I do also understand that there was a request to make sure that there wasn't any issues with our town charter. So I, your request, if you wanted, if you're so inclined to make a request to, through staff to the town council on making sure, you could do that. But I believe that the request was to make sure that there was no issues across the board, not only for the select board, the town charter, but also the special legislation for you all, the HDC.
Let me make sure that I understand. So are you saying that the request that was already made by the select board would cover the HDC issues?
It was actually for town council's, I guess opinion was made by the planning director.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So I believe again, I can't speak to him at the moment, but I believe that request was covering all bases from a town's perspective. What would the CLG, would there be any concerns with what the, correct.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's very good to know. So maybe the way that we leave this is I can touch base with Andrew and see when we might expect to see the results of that. Would that be fair?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. I think so.
So folks, I don't think that we need to take a vote on this just yet. Let me touch base with Andrew and see. I think Holly spelled it out really well. It sounds like we're doing a town council is looking sort of at all of the aspects of this, not just the select board aspects of this. And if so, we can just await that opinion and review that and move forward with the substantive discussion about the memorandum of understanding.
Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Chair, oh, sorry, I'll let you go, Stephen.
No, that's fine. I was just going to support that. I through the grapevine, I had maybe misunderstood. I thought it came from the select board. So understanding that it came with a little more, a broader scope than just select board leadership perspective is helpful to know. Thanks, Holly.
Great. And Holly,
Yes, sir.
back to you. You were about to say something.
Yes, now I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, as far as the MOU boilerplate document, were there any concerns on that from yours perspective? I did want to mention that you probably noticed in there that it said a coordinator would be a position from town's perspective. I'm assuming, and from discussions that I've had with MHC. That would be somebody like myself as preservation planner, as staff liaison for both commissions. That would be just another duty as assigned, if you will. I just want you all to know that I'm for that. I understand the importance of what a CLG would do for our NHL. So I just wanted to leave you at that.
Yeah, I saw you had that posted up there, and I assumed that was you. And yeah, I'm personally, I'm totally fine with that. So folks, I don't think that we need to take a vote on this one. I did just want to discuss it and see if there were any other things that people needed information on prior to us really sitting down and going through the nuts and bolts of this arrangement. Any further comment, questions, anything before we close?
Motion to adjourn.
I'm going to hold that motion just for a second, John, just to make sure that everybody is satisfied that we're heading in the right direction. Any other comments before I take a vote on John's motion to adjourn? Oh, George, I see your hand raised. Yeah, you're unmuted, right?
Yes, I am now. Thank you,
Okay.
Ray, for considering this. I know your agenda is horrendous. I don't wonder that you don't look at it until the night before. But I really appreciate your considering it and moving it along. I think this is something that will be helpful for the town as access to funds that are otherwise difficult to get, so we can continue to do these kinds of surveys. And I look forward to dealing with it at the next level. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you very much for those comments, Georgia. I really appreciate it. Okay. So there is a motion on the table from Mr. McLaughlin, who, John, by the way, if you're still there,
Here,
it's nice to see you back.
thank you. Appreciate it. It's hard.
It's great to have you back. Okay, so John, I'm going to take a roll call vote on your motion to adjourn. Stephen,
Aye.
Val,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
are you okay? And I'm in favor. Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much for your participation.